from home.
Hello, welcome everyone to the new episode of No Office Podcast. Today I have a treat for you because I have a guest, Rand Fishkin. Hello, Rand.
Hi, Michael. How are you?
Great. This was particularly difficult to schedule because we are 9 hours apart. I'm in Europe, Rand is in Seattle, so it's like on the other side of the globe, but we made it happen.
I'm thrilled to be here.
Thanks, Rand, for taking the time. So to continue my introductions, Rand is the author of the book Lost and Founder, which is a book I enjoyed this summer listening to Rand. And you know, we are fellow entrepreneurs. We are fellow startup owners. We are fellow people who have been scarred running companies. Rand, you are known to the internet as the founder of SEO Moz. Can you tell more about your story in a short nutshell?
Sure. Yeah. Let's see. Very briefly, I dropped out of college in 2001 and started working with my mom, Jillian, who would become my co-founder at Moz. And that company originally was doing web design and then became an SEO consulting firm and then an SEO software company. We raised lots of venture capital. I was made the CEO in 2007 and then basically ran that company until 2014 when I stepped down. I stayed there a few more years. We raised a little more money. Growth sort of petered out and I left the company in 2018. Moz was sold to a private equity company in a not fantastic transaction in 2021. But when I left Moz, I started SparkToro, my current company, the day after I left. And this journey has been very, very different. I think a lot of what you read in Lost and Founder, which was published in 2018, is kind of about those first 17 years making lots of mistakes and learning from them and trying to build something special, but sort of getting stuck in many of the hard parts. And SparkToro is a very different kind of company. It's still marketing software, but not SEO software. It tries to help with finding people's sources of influence and behaviors and demographics online. And this business has been going for 5 years and is much smaller, but a much happier, more chill, and technically more successful venture in terms of living up to the promises that it made to its investors, its team, its customers.
Yeah, I mean, you know, reading your book, which is, by the way, really totally recommended. I really loved it, and really it was just fun listening to you, like recount all these stories. And for me, you know, the thing is that I started my company Nozbe as completely bootstrapped, but I've always been kind of tempted by the, you know, VC route and all that stuff. And but in the end of the day, I didn't go for it. And in your book, you pretty explicitly explain which companies fit this model and which don't. So because I actually, you know, going into this book, I was expecting that you would be completely like trashing the VC environment and all that, and the whole startup world and all that stuff, which you did not do. What you did is like you just gave a very comprehensive description because you've been on the inside of what really it means to raise money or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the strongest way to change people's minds and to have a thoughtful conversation about any topic is to sort of steelman your opponent's viewpoints, right? And so what's the strongest possible case for venture capital and what are the weak cases for it, right? And I'm not going to argue against the weak cases. I'm not going to sort of cherry pick the worst examples of venture. I'm going to try and argue that 99.9% of companies and entrepreneurs should not go raise venture capital. And that argument, by the way, is something almost every venture capitalist will say too. They'll say venture is wrong for almost everyone. The problem is it's marketed to all of us. You talked about it yourself, Michael, right? You said you had this temptation to go out and raise capital. And I think that many entrepreneurs feel the same. Even many folks who are just joining startup teams, they look for companies because they believe that's a signal of reliability, or that the investors who've put money into that company, oh, well, they must be very serious, thoughtful people. And if they're putting money into this, then I can trust that this business is going to be a high quality venture, and that they're going to treat people right. And this is just not how it is, right? So venture capital isn't just wrong for the companies that don't raise it. It's also wrong for 9 out of 10 of the companies that do raise it. And this is, I think, the part that's not spoken about well, right? Is that if you, for example, if your company, Michael, if Nozbe were to go out and raise venture, your statistical odds of existing in 5 years drop dramatically, right? They go down to about 15%, like about 15%, 20% of venture-backed companies still exist 5 years later. Some of those obviously are acquired, right? And maybe that story is good, but quite rare. A lot of those are acqui-hires. A lot of those are acquisitions that maybe buy a very tiny amount of the company's stock and essentially get some of the assets, but it's a fire sale. Nobody makes out well. And then a huge number go bankrupt. And unfortunately, 99% of the stories that we read about companies that raise money are not, well, this company went bankrupt. They join a group of 764 other companies that Andreessen Horowitz has invested in the last 30 years, the last 30 months that have also gone bankrupt. Their statistical rate of survival for an Andreessen Horowitz-backed company is now 1 in 75. Like that's never the story. It's, here's this company that raised money. Look at their amazing work. Here's this company that was acquired for this huge amount of money. Here's this company that went public. Those are the stories that get told, not the stories about the hundreds and thousands of companies that go under. And as a result, venture is viewed through rose-colored glasses.
And really rose-colored glasses. I mean, from my personal experience. So, for example, there is this other entrepreneur in my homeland of Poland. He's I really like this guy, and we're good kind of friends, online friends, let's say. I really admire him and admire his the way he's doing marketing and all that stuff. And he's a co-founder of a company, but he has just a stake of this company because the rest is being eaten up by the VC. And he went on a stock exchange, right? So there was this. I remember there was this amount of press about him and about his company, and I was really jealous. I was like, man, nobody talks about me, because I have this small company, I have this mom and pop shop, I have this lifestyle business, right? And he has this company that goes to stock exchange now. Like, this is amazing, right? And then I talked to him, and he said, yeah, so with the stock exchange money, I could a little bit advance my mortgage. And this is what I remember what you said in the book about the mechanics of financials when you have a VC-backed company. And I was like, yeah, so a few years ago, I bought my house for cash. Right. so it's like it's a different dynamics, because in a VC-backed company, you are not getting all the profits. I remember, like, you quoted the story in the book, like that Moz was already doing so many millions of dollars in revenue, and your friends were just, they didn't understand why you're not, driving a Lamborghini, and it was the same thing. I realized, but I was still kind of jealous. But then I realized, damn, but I actually prefer my lifestyle.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's the money side of it, which I think folks don't talk about very honestly. And I think that if your goal in the whatever tech world is to maximize the amount of earnings that you have, going into management at one of the big tech companies is the obvious path, right?
Yeah.
if you and I wanted to make the most money that we possibly could, we should get jobs at Amazon or Google or Facebook
Completely.
or, whatever. And we should try and get promoted a few times, because that's going to sort of get us to whatever, $4, $5, $6, $700,000 a year in income, plus our stock benefits and blah, 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 right? Like that's how you make the most money in tech, especially with the lowest odds of failure. Generally speaking, even if you get fired from one of those jobs, you can go to another one. Oh, Salesforce is hiring me. HubSpot will pick me up, right? Like, that's how you grow your sort of earnings potential. If what you want to do is something like what we're doing, which is to stay independent, to get to run your own business, call the shots, wake up when you want to wake up, take the meetings you want to take, run the business how you want to run it, then venture is not for you either. Right? Because that is not, that's not part of the model. The model really demands that you go all out very hard in certain pathways with certain sorts of structures and environments, and constraints around what you can and cannot do for a considerable period of time. Moz was an interesting story for me in that I thought most venture-backed companies generally had an exit 5 to 7 years after founding. And that's statistically true, but the problem is most of those exits happen in the first 2 to 4 years, and they're acqui-hires or fire sales, right? So Geraldine and I, for example, invested in a startup a few years ago, and they were technically acquired, but the acquisition basically was for no money. It was just, hey, we're going to announce an acquisition so that the founder and the team sort of looks good on paper, but we're not paying anything for the company, right? And so investors got $0, but it was considered an acquisition. And that is the story an overwhelming majority of the time, right? That happens a ton. Folks don't talk about it because it doesn't sound very sexy. It makes startups sound bad, right? And the number of folks who make millions of dollars from an acquisition of a venture-backed startup is vanishingly small. I think it's literally less than 1 in 1,000 people, 1 in 1,000 companies that try to raise money will get to that scenario, and less than 1 in 50 who raise venture less than 1 in 50 founders who raise venture will make $1 million or more from their venture.
Yeah, but again, this is not how the story is told. This, as I said, the story is told completely differently to the mainstream, completely differently. So in that sense,
well, I think this is it's part of the obligation, right? I think of folks who go through that process, even if you do. Full disclosure: when Moz sold, Geraldine and I still owned about 20%, a little less than 20% of the company. Moz's sale was not good. It was not a good scenario, right? I think that, a couple of people have analyzed the deal and been like, hey, wait a minute. The company that acquired it spent $91 million on all acquisitions that quarter. So Moz must have sold for $91 million or less, and Moz was making $50 million. So they didn't even get 2x on their earnings. And their last round, they raised at 100. So they didn't even cover the valuation.
Yeah.
So, so obviously not a good scenario, but since Geraldine and I still owned a significant percent, we did make more than $1 million, right? So we're in that really, really tiny group. I'm grateful. Yeah, I'm grateful that somebody sold it, or somebody bought it. And I don't know, it's a complicated story. I think I need to write a follow-up to Lost and Founder, right? About that transaction, about the end of Moz, and then about SparkToro and what's happening there. And I run another company as well, because I can't help myself.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you can help yourself. Okay. Okay, so we'll get to SparkToro very soon, because I'm really curious about how you set it up. So we'll get to that. Well, okay, let's get to that. I'm going to ask some follow-up questions from the past anyway. So you were kind of ousted, right, from Moz, and then you had to, and then when you started SparkToro, what was your main thinking of what you're going to do differently?
I mean, so many things, right? I think what's interesting is, Lost and Founder is really a guidebook almost for myself, right? It's here are 14 things I'm going to do very differently. Things around how I'm going to build a team, things about how I'm going to structure our work, things about how I'm going to design the business, things about how we're going to do customer research, things about how we're going to design our funding round, things
I
about
have
how we're,
notes.
yeah. So all of those things are totally different. SparkToro is only 3 people. It's just myself, Casey, and Amanda. That's it.
Cool.
That's the whole
Cool.
team, right? And we do not have any plans to hire in the next year or two. Maybe 2 or 3 years out, I can imagine us hiring one more person. But we're intentionally keeping the team extremely small. We never want to operate in the red. We plan to be profitable every month that we exist, right? That's our goal. Never have a month where we spend more than we make. It could happen that maybe there's one month where we have to do a big data deal and we buy something, but whatever. That is completely different, right, than Moz, which, after we raised $18 million, I think there were months where we were losing $1 million on the business.
Wow.
Yeah. In the red by $1 million in a single month. We are, SparkToro is never planning to, try to get to 50 or $100 million in revenue, right? Our goal is not to be anything like those businesses. We would love to be a between $2 and $10 million business a year. And every one of those numbers,
completely
right?
the same. Completely agree.
Yeah. It's not that, look, if the company is whatever, it's at $10 million and it keeps growing, we're not going to turn down customers. We're just not optimizing for that, right? That's not our,
Yes.
And in order to be successful, we don't have to achieve that. Our success comes from being profitable, paying back our investors, which we just did this June. So that's quite exciting. I mentioned SparkToro is already a more successful business by that metric. That's because all of our investors, which are a lot of folks like yourself, Michael, right? Other entrepreneurs running small businesses in the marketing universe and software universe, and they got their money back, right? If you put in $50K in June of this year, you got a check from us for $50,000. And now, hopefully every year, 2, 3 going forward, you get another check for $10,000, 20,
nice,
maybe 30, so the goal is in 10 years from now, you've gotten 2, 3, 4x your money. And it was a relatively low risk investment, right? It's not like these high growth, only win by getting to $100 million. SparkToro is very low risk. Like our intent was, even if we are sort of failing and things aren't going well, then we're going to pay back our investors most of their sum, because it's not, the business isn't taking off. So we're going to get people, whatever, 2/3 of their money back and then call it a day. But instead, it's been quite successful. And so we keep running with it.
That's perfect. That's, I always keep this message to our customers that, that we are, our investors are our customers. We're customers funded. So, it was like we had a difficult time this year, and then at some point we had to raise the prices, and which with Nozbe is pretty cheap, but still we had to raise the prices actually to maintain the costs and everything. And I made this message. I remember it was so hard to make this message for customers, to really communicate. I mean, we haven't raised prices in like 6-7 years, so it was time to adjust the prices, and especially after the pandemic and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So we did that, and I remember I was scared like crazy. And I was like, okay, if and I had a target of how many people would keep renewing. So we announced that we're going to raise the prices, and we said, until that time you can still renew for a yearly price, for the old price.
At the old price,
to keep the old price for another more, for one more year, before we renew because you're a good customer, we love you, like you've been with us. So I'm giving you, heads up, next month the price is going to go up. And I remember it was so hard. And then I had a number in mind, how many people should renew for us to to also keep our economics right and all that stuff. I was wrong by no, 3 times, so that 3 times more people did that, and they and some sent me messages saying, Michael, I'm not renewing, I want to pay the bigger price. So it's like,
Wow.
so this is what you get when you
I
are
mean,
in touch with the
goodwill,
customer.
yeah, goodwill is a real thing. It doesn't matter what field you're in, right? You could be
Yeah,
in retail, in e-commerce, in service business, but absolutely, I think there's a beautiful thing that you can build through, trust and affinity and
yeah,
reliability and clear empathy for your customers, right? That you always want to honor them and treat them with respect,
exactly.
and that they feel that and then want to do the same to you, right? It's a relationship.
Yeah,
And I this is my favorite part of human relationships, is when they trump capitalism, right? Like
right.
they trump raw capitalism. And obviously I'm a capitalist, right? I invest in companies, and I
Mhm.
have run companies, and I build them, right? I like small scale capitalism, right? I like the freedom to put your labor wherever you want, and if it's valuable, you can make money from that, and then you can spend that money in different ways and support the things you want to support. Like, I think that's actually great. I like market economies generally. What I don't love is exploitative capitalism. I don't
Yeah, the
like,
extreme capitalism.
yeah, sort of this weird late stage that we're in. All that stuff is crap. And it's really, I think it's very harmful to a ton of people who work. And so, my um, my philosophy is, if you can prove to your customers that you do care about them in that way, that you are not just out for growth and their money, they'll support you when you come on hard times too.
Yeah, completely. And we were so grateful. And I was like, I had like the whole, summer holidays. I was just so happy. I was just like, so relieved, that it worked,
Yeah, yeah,
and it worked, that, that people really like, I could feel the reciprocity of this, the of us, being together in this, mm, and this is what you get like in this good capitalism, like when when there is respect, when there's communication, when there is connection. And so switching a little bit gears, because I have notes. One of the things I loved about so there are many things about your book that I love, but one thing particularly which applies to me now, which I loved from your book, was the whole idea of core values. This is something that you mentioned. You had the TAGFI core values, as I remember: transparency, authenticity, generosity. Was for
fun,
fun, empathy, and exceptional. Right. So you had
exceptional.
TAGFI, and and this whole idea that I realized over the summer when I was, because I was a kind of I went on a kind of thinkation vacation.
Oh,
So it means that I don't work on like business to daily business
yeah,
for a
yeah.
month, but I do work, but I just work in a different way. I listen to books like yours. I take notes. I analyze business and like the whole thing, that
I
like
love
take a
that.
step back, right? And one of the things I realized is that this is really important, and especially the examples that you gave in the book, where things go bad when you start bending the rules, bending the core values. When you like, okay, this guy is a jerk, but he's really good. He delivers results, right? And all that, kind of excuses. Uh, uh, um, and I remember this situation like a few years back when a very big customer wanted to buy Nozbe. And normally, we serve small businesses, but this time it was like a bigger customer, a bank actually. And they tricked our ordering system to get a better price. They did something really shady. We fixed it, but then I talked to the CEO, and the CEO was in on this thing. He said, no, we demand now that you keep the promise of this price and whatever. And I'm like, look, man, you cheated us, and you know it. I know it. Your IT guy knows it. Like, everybody knows it. So like there's no, and I just before our conversation, I just refunded you all the money. So I have no obligation to you, and you have until Friday to export your data because I'm good to you, and I want to. So this kind of liberty and freedom to walk away from people who who want to bend the rules and not be good.
And this is it's one of those tough things where if you have investors and you have growth targets and you have, gosh, if we piss off this guy at this bank, is he going to talk about us to his network? And is that, is he going to be potentially helpful in the future? Or, is our next round going to be contingent on the input of someone like him? To hate that, right? I love being able to say, I don't want to work with you. Sorry. Right. And it's just there's nothing beyond that. Right.
Exactly.
The conversation's over. You never have to think about it again. If it comes back to hurt you, doesn't matter. Right. The world is big.
Yes.
I love that about the freedom and flexibility that our kinds of businesses provide. And it was always a frustration and fear for me during my time at Moz, right? That on all sorts of issues, right? On issues of ethics, of behavior in the product, and even of what people were doing. At SparkToro, we we review everyone who buys the product, usually 4 or 5 transactions a day, right? So it's not very many people who are buying, but I can look at who's buying the product, who are the new customers who are signing up. And a couple of times we've had people where we thought, we don't want them using the product. For example, law enforcement organizations in the United States, we don't want them using SparkToro for sort of their purposes. Same with some political organizations. We basically just refunded the money and said, sorry, we don't allow your organization to use this, right? And people, the 2 times it's happened, they didn't even write back, right? They were just like, oh, okay. So fine, great, right? It's, I linked them to sort of our statement on social justice, and they never replied. But that freedom, right, means that I sleep easy every night, right? It means that Amanda and Casey, right, who I know share my values, feel good about working at SparkToro. It means that if you sign up for SparkToro and you're someone who sort of shares our values, that we're that kind of company, right? We're the kind of company who will not take money to reject or compromise our beliefs. For some people, that's really powerful. And those are exactly the kind of people I want to serve.
There was this issue, I remember, like, because we still use GitHub, but for example, GitHub accepted the ICE money, and it still kind of taints them, and it's still something that we're strongly thinking of.
No, I mean, Cloudflare is another example, right? They're sort of a default. You don't have to use them, but it's very difficult to use a competitor.
Not to use them. Exactly.
And they are a good product. They do make it really easy. They obviously are, have built something great, but also I really, really dislike their stance on who they decide to protect and don't. And I fundamentally disagree. They've made a few good moves in the last couple of years that I like, but anyway, on the whole, not thrilled. Google's another example, right? Like we use Google Chat, we use Google Email, Calendar, all that kind of stuff. Google Workspace is a good product. Is Google a monopolistic entity that abuses their monopoly power, to unfairly compete in other sectors? Hell yeah. Obviously, yes, right. I think there's a court case right now, literally happening today. The Department of Justice is suing Google, and the trial's happening right now as we're having this conversation. And I hope Google loses big time. I hope they have to pay some gigantic fine. But no matter how gigantic it is, it probably won't do anything to their business.
That's true. That's true. That's why, for example, it's good to be able to rely on smaller companies, on smaller products, And I had the same question just today from our VP of product. He asked me, should we keep using Zoom? Because, for example, Zoom decided, to use AI to analyze all of your chats without your consent.
Yep.
So I
All
was
your
like,
content is theirs now, and they can sell it.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. So it's like, you really have to decide, and you have to check what's really important to you. And so what we're discussing here, and I want to again to call attention to everyone listening, is that small companies run like ours, they have the freedom to choose, because we don't have to worry about the investors, the stakeholders. We don't have to maximize the shareholder value because we don't have to maximize anything. We
Yeah.
can also decide, as you said, you can have just fewer orders and still be okay. You don't need to take all the orders and all the money and all that stuff. And the same with people. When you hire, you can be really picky about who you hire and who you trust. And that's why I'm also happy that we are running a small company, and right now, like, one of my key employees resigned, but he resigned after 11 years of working
Oh,
with me. So
wow.
it's like, so it was like a bittersweet moment, because I'm gonna miss him and all that stuff. But of course, for him, it's a good thing actually to move on and have a different adventure. And actually, I'm a big fan. I'm happy for him. But and then he told me that, Michael, like, you should be happy that that somebody like me stayed so long.
Yeah.
And this is these things that I learned to celebrate now.
Yeah. I think it's wonderful when people have incredible careers, in your organization, and then they're able to take those skills elsewhere and make somewhere else better. I have a friend who runs an agency, and he talks about how, a third of the agency's business comes from people who've left their teams, gone to other companies, and then, hired them as consultants to work with their new company. And I just think that's amazing, right? That shows the sort of integrity and quality and relationship building and trust that happens inside the company. Really special.
Yeah. So coming back, just to reiterate the whole thing with the core values, what you argue in the book, what I would like everyone to listen to grasp, is the fact that the cool thing about these values is that you have thought about them before you make a decision. So it's like, when you make a decision, you have to filter it through these values. And if it doesn't compute, if it doesn't, it's not compatible with these values, you have to say no. It's like Derek Siever's hell yes or no. If it's not a hell yes, it's a no.
I think this is it's one of the challenges that I've had actually with the core values, because a lot of people who've read about Moz's values previously, or SparkToro's, right, which is ours are Belux, which is a little bit different, but the values themselves are not what's important. The important part is having that architecture, essentially saying, here are things we are not willing to compromise for money. Or alternatively, you could say our core value is money, right? Which is what most public companies, virtually every bank and financial institution, virtually every big tech company, their core value is not any value except growth at all costs, right? And the only reason that they ever engage in sort of ethical behavior is because they believe that ethical behavior will help them make more money in the long or short run.
Yes.
Right. And if that's you, then I would encourage you to just say it, right? Don't hide it. Don't pretend, don't create fake core values that you think will recruit people, because you're just going to lose them, right? They're just going to be frustrated. They're going to hate working with you. They're going to be in an environment where the values that are on the wall are not the same as the ones that are actually in practice. And if you do have values, right, if you have things that you are unwilling to compromise for more money, then write those down. Write those down, distribute them, get them organized so that you can always refer back to them, and anyone on your team can refer back to them when challenging situations arise, right? And you all know what the right decision is beforehand. It's really tough if you don't have those conversations until something comes up, because then it gets high conflict. But if you can just point to, hey, the values say this is who we are, conversation over, easy, right? Everybody agreed to it beforehand.
Yeah, that's and like So today is an iPhone day, basically, because today Apple is unveiling the new iPhone and
Mm.
Apple Watches and whatever. But for example, Apple is for me this kind of company that on one hand are doing lots of beautiful things. They have fantastic iPhones. I use them. I use the Apple Watches, whatever. Uh, I love it. But I'm also a developer for the Apple platform because we have an app
Oh,
on on the App Store, and over there, the way they're compromising their other values that they promote so much, it's striking. They're on the App Store. Basically, they're a bully.
yeah.
They, with every, we ship a new version of Nozbe basically every week because we want to make sure that
Right.
all the bugs are there and fixed and all that stuff, and new features are coming as soon as we can. So we are trying to have this shipping train of every week shipping a new version of Nozbe. But what happens is that every week we are stressed that maybe they will reject our app for some weird reason. That maybe we by accident linked to our page and this is against their rules of in-app purchases or whatever, and this kind of money, this kind of services money is tainting them, and
Yeah.
changes my attitude towards them, because of that. And that's why I have a very bittersweet relationship with them because of that, because I'm a developer on their platform and I'm there at their mercy, and if they say no more Nozbe, there is no more Nozbe on App Store.
Yeah, I have often wondered whether the app battle is worth the price, right? That essentially, I've talked to a lot of startup founders who build apps, right? Who have an app version of essentially their product. And I don't know, my position is the open web is always better. It's always, always, always better. And even if, you say to yourself, gosh, but we're going to lose 30, 40, 50, 60% of our customers really wish that we had an app, or they'd use an app rather than the mobile website. I don't know. I'm sort of like, yeah, but Apple is going to be Apple and Android, frankly, too, right? Are going to be so terrible to you. They're going to make you work so hard. The cost of setting up those, maintaining them, jumping through their hoops, the risk of at any point they could, delist you, all those kinds of things, which by the way, that is abusive monopoly power.
Of course it is.
I think governments should not accept that power, right? Just like you should not be prohibited, right? There should be no authority that can say, oh, you're not allowed to set up and run that website. You can't offer your product over the internet. You should not, the Apple and Android have monopolies on all the apps on the planet, and they should not be allowed to run those businesses the way that they do. In fact, I would argue that, if I were the Department of Justice, I would say, nope, that's not how it's going to be. There's going to be an open source system for apps, and everyone has to conform to it. Just like I think the EU made it so that USB-C, right, has to be the power source that everyone uses. You can't have your own proprietary power systems like Apple has for years, which of course made their accessories business insanely profitable, but also just a horrific consumer pain in the ass. So, this stuff is abusive. This is the late stage capitalism problem that we've been talking about. And I would argue that for most entrepreneurs, I would tell them, just go with the mobile web, right? And tell your customers like, hey, this is how we're doing it. I understand it's not possible for everyone, but
exactly. So for apps like mine, unfortunately, this is not possible. People really demand an app for our platforms. I mean, we spent like quite a few months, for example, optimizing our app for Mac App Store because we were rejected several times. But this is where our customers were expecting our app to be. So it's our kind of job to be there where our customers expect us, even though no fun. but this is again, for different businesses is different thing. For our kind of software it is. For your kind of software, I'm sure not. Like this, you don't really need an app. So for that, no. And that's the thing. That's where we should make a conscious choice. So again, this is so I'm really happy to have you here because really for me, this whole idea of this, late stage capitalism of this, I mean, I've been listening to the musical Hamilton, and I'm a big fan, and and they talk about slavery as well, and and kind of, on one hand there is no slavery, but on the other hand there is, because because some people are trapped and some companies are trapped, and because of these powers. So that's why I'm really happy that to open their eyes to see businesses like yours, like mine, that we can shape the way we do things. And again, to quote Derek Sivers, in one of his books, he said that your company is your own unicorn land. You decide how you shape it if you have the freedom to do it. And I think what I like about your story is that you're showing both ways, and showing with which way you're happier.
Yeah, I mean, my goal is certainly to, I think there's the obvious sort of small scale goal, which is make SparkToro successful, have our investors benefit from that, have our team and our customers benefit from the product and the revenue that we make. But then there's the bigger goal of how do I popularize this type of business and encourage folks who could raise money, who could build, whatever big businesses, to instead decide that small scale capitalism and small business building isn't just a lifestyle business, right? Which is used pejoratively, right? It is a lifestyle business, but every business is a lifestyle business. Venture is a lifestyle business too. It's just not a lifestyle I want to live. Right?
Exactly.
And I don't think that we should elevate or praise or worship entrepreneurs who've built businesses of a particular size, right? By number of employees or by amount of revenue. I think that we should recognize that there is beauty and things worthy of emulation in businesses of all sizes, right? And we need to tell more small scale stories, and we need to find ways to popularize alternative forms of funding, right? Like the SparkToro funding, or investors like Tiny Seed or Calm Capital, or some of these alternatives to venture that provide a much saner way to get entrepreneurs who can't afford to bootstrap, right? They maybe don't have the money to get that business off the ground, or they don't have the financial freedom and flexibility to sort of be unpaid or underpaid for some series of years. Let's enable those kinds of businesses too. I don't think startups are inherently nearly as risky as the venture asset class makes them out to be, right? The whole venture model collapses if you say, hey, most startups would survive. Not even most. A third of startups, if you told them a third of startups would survive long-term and be profitable and be going concerns if they didn't have to chase venture capital and chase the returns model that works for you, they could be like SparkToro, like Nozbe, like Balsamic. Those businesses, if they work at even 30%, 35% of them, then the venture model is wrong, right? It's just it's broken, because it really punishes 90% of the startups, 95% of the startups to benefit just a few.
Exactly. Anyway, we'll link in the show notes to SparkToro, to your description how you funded the company, because it's really interesting.
And we open source that, so if anybody wants to use it, you can just take the documents that we've created, and then give those to your attorney, obviously, to put in your own details. But you don't have to start from scratch. Hopefully, we can save you tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees.
Exactly. And this is what I do, for example, with popularizing also remote work, right? Because my company has been fully remote for forever. And I wrote my kind of short no office book. I mean, I drafted, but again, this is also our ideas, to open source this, to show it to the world, and let people just have a version of that, but have a good example. So we will link to these so that people can really like steal your ideas, because I mean, take the ideas and spin for them, because I think this is the way to go. This is the way to, as you said, alternative funding, more freedom, just a little bit slower, but it doesn't mean that we are really slow. It's just, it means we are like normal.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can build exciting businesses using the sort of compound interest model, right? Which is that it may not be, $10 million, $100 million in 5 years or 7 years, but it could get there in 15 or 20.
Yep.
And it could be a very exciting size for your team, your investors, and your customers in even just a few years. There's nothing wrong with that. This worship of the, hundreds of millions and billions of dollars is frankly weird. It is very weird. It makes me think that there's a, I don't know, sort of a conspiracy where the press has been told, don't you dare cover anyone doing less than $10 million of revenue. If you hear about a startup that's not funded by venture and they're doing less than 10 million, you nix that story. I don't want to see it. It's weird because there's a lot of us out there and there's no coverage, right? It just, those stories don't get told. And because they don't get told, people can't emulate them.
Exactly.
Right? A lot of entrepreneurs like myself, right? When I was in my 20s, I didn't even know you could do something like what I'm doing now. I didn't know that was possible. And of course it is, but that's the goal, right? I hope when this podcast and stories like yours, books like yours, Michael, come out, more people find them, more people realize that there's a possibility. And if that's what they want and that's what they love, they embrace it. And so I appreciate you for helping to tell these stories.
Rand, thank you so much. Thanks for being here on this podcast, on the No Office podcast, brought to you by Nozbe, by my tool that I've been developing for the last 16 years. And by the way, just a short promo, we just launched a new business plan, and there is a special promo for that. So anyway, Rand, thank you so much. Thanks for being here, and see you soon somewhere on the internet. And let's keep the conversation going about how we can launch these kind of businesses and help nurture this kind of businesses. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Take care.